I think you must have figured out by now, I'm a curious guy, I love learning. So about 5 years ago, I had gone to this university called Singularity University. So you stay in the NASA campus where the astronauts stay for 5.5 days. And from morning to night, you're learning about this concept of exponential technologies. Now, exponential technologies are very interesting technologies. What happens is that in linear fashion, 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. Exponential, 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8. So let's take an example. That suppose you were to fold a piece of paper and keep folding it. When you fold it a few times, you're going to have a thickness of maybe ½ inch. But if you fold it about 182 times, then you reach the end of the universe. That's how exponential technologies work. When they grow exponentially, they're very difficult to predict. And a lot of exponential technologies are going to completely transform the world. So let's say when a steam engine was invented, it actually disrupted only transportation. But the exponential technologies like blockchain, or 3D printing, or technologies like Bitcoin are going to transform every single industry. So the way exponential technologies can be described is that each of them double at a certain rate. They are come from this place of abundance where there's no scarcity, and they keep on doubling. So whether it's solar technology, whether it's 3D printing, whether it's AI, all of them are exponential technologies, and they're going to completely transform the world. I think we are surrounded with exponential technologies, and what is happening is that one technology is going to disrupt something which is totally different. So let me give you one example. If you take drones as a technology, drones are sort of doubling in capacity of the weight they can carry as well as the duration they can last with the battery almost every 9 months. So there's a very interesting example that Ashok Wadhwa from Singularity University talks about. He talks about is that a port was being built in Germany. That port was going to get completed with $10 billion of investment by 2030. Then what happened was that they realized that drones today can carry about 500 kilos of weight, but in the next 9 months they can carry 1 ton of weight, then 2, then 4, then 8. So by the 10-year time when the port would get completed, all the drones were capable of carrying containers directly onto the transport system, which is the truck. So basically to expand the port would be futile, because by the time the port would get completed, you didn't need a port. So what's going to happen is that an exponential technology like drones in a way is disrupting an infrastructure industry like a port, and that's what the world is going to be. What you do is that you look at what technology is going to disrupt you, and don't look at it what the size of the technology is today. You look at it what is the rate of growth and how it has grown in the last 10 years. Printing was invented 35 years ago. It actually became what it became today after 35 years. Same way, Kodak was the company that invented digital cameras. But because they thought that the technology is going to grow in linear fashion, they couldn't predict that phones will become a very, very good camera. And because of that, Kodak and the printing business will go out of business, and Kodak went bankrupt. So exponential technologies are technologies that are going to disrupt everything. Look at it, what it is 10 years ago, what it is today, and then predict what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And that will tell you what industry that technology is going to disrupt. And it's not going to disrupt only one industry, it's going to disrupt multiple industries. So it depends on what industry you take. I think it has the capability of disrupting every single industry. But let's take an example of disrupting advertising that I've spent 20 years in. Now when you look at it, advertising requires optimization. So earlier what would happen is computers and AI could not do creative effectively. But what happened was in the last 5-10 years, almost every 3 months, every 6 months, AI is improving, and it's reached now the stage where a creative done by a computer or AI is as good as done by the human. Now the challenge is when disruption happens, it doesn't happen when the whole of AI has to become better than everybody. So let me give you an example. Let's take there are 100 million drivers, and there are 100 million sort of AI cars, autonomous cars. Now what happens is there are 100 million individual drivers, but there is only one transport system, which is an AI transport system. What if the transport system becomes 51% better than the average of 100 million drivers? Then even the 49 million drivers who are actually better than the autonomous system will actually lose their jobs, because it's a smarter idea to get the entire transport system to this autonomous transport system. So the fact of the matter is that sometimes to disrupt your job or your company, you don't require everybody to be better. Only if the average of AI is better than the average of humans, the entire system gets replaced. So 49 million drivers who are actually supposedly better than the AI driver, they will also lose their jobs. The challenge is that 51% will become 60, will become 70, because it's exponential technology. It becomes better and better. The other problem and the challenge for humanity is, I have learned from my own mistakes. So my father said, make as many mistakes as you want, but just make sure they're new ones. The challenge with exponential technologies and AI is that a driver cannot communicate to the other driver where the pothole is in a place like India, or actually tell them to watch out on a certain bend. But an AI driver informs every single other car that this is an accident spot, there is a pothole, there is traffic, and because they work as a cohesive unit, they become better than the average of humanity. So biggest challenge with the exponential technologies is that it's learning on its own and it's communicating with each other, and it never makes any mistake second time because it communicates to every single person who's in that network, in that cohesive system. So that's the reason exponential technologies have, and especially things like AI, have the challenge that they're going to disrupt a lot of jobs and a lot of businesses far quicker than we ever anticipated it to be. So there's a person called Wayne Gretzky, who's one of the best ice hockey players in the world. And he was asked that, how do you play so well? So he says, most people skate where the puck is, while I skate where the puck is going to be. So exponential technologies tell you where the puck is going to be. So the fact of the matter is, today, if you take metaverse, or you take blockchain, or you take cryptocurrencies and all these exponential technologies, you know at the rate at which they're doubling. You know where they are today. So you can actually predict where they're going to be. And some of these are going to intersect. So today, if electric vehicles are coming in, then what's going to happen is, from 200 moving parts or 2000 moving parts, you're going to go to 20 moving parts. Batteries are going to become very, very critical and important. Autonomous vehicles are going to create this whole need for new entertainment systems that go into cars. So the fact of the matter is that if you look at all the exponential technologies that exist, make a list of them, see where they were 10 years ago, where they are today, calculate the rate of growth, then it will tell you what opportunities exist in every single industry. So if car entertainment systems are going to become important, then creating content which can be consumed in a moving vehicle will become important. If you take housing, if autonomous vehicles can take you outside the city, then housing complexes 2-3 hours away from the city will also make sense. If hyperloop is going to take you from here to Pune in 20 minutes, then the need to have a downtown house in a place like Bombay or San Francisco may not be required. So what's going to happen is that each of these exponential technologies are going to disrupt, and we can almost predict the disruption. So I used to do consulting in Bangladesh, and when I would come back to India and go back there again, I would actually predict what's going to happen in Bangladesh, because it happened in India and Bangladesh was a few years behind us. So the same way today, some things are happening in US, and you know what's going to happen in India in the next 3 to 5 years. If metaverse is launched in US, it's going to become very, very critical and important in India very, very soon. But now with exponential technologies, they travel faster. So my recommendation is that decide the industry you're in, see what is disrupting your industry. It may be only 1% market share today, but if it's doubling every year, then you know that that one is going to become 100 or 90 very, very quickly before you realize it. So you start preparing it from today onwards. So I think it depends on what task you do. So the challenge is that the first industrial revolution that happened, it disrupted a lot of sort of jobs, because what happened was things which were automated were done by robotics and computers faster than what a human being can do. But all the cognitive jobs that existed sort of never get replaced because computers could not do cognitive tasks. What has happened in the last 5 years is, because of AI coming in, a lot of cognitive tasks are sort of being now replaced. So what's happening is that AI is able to do creative, is able to answer questions, it can do modeling and sort of decide what is the right decision to take. All these functions were done by human beings earlier. So the challenge is that how do you keep your job if your job is going to get replaced? So the first thing is keep learning. Second thing is that look at what parts of, so let's say, suppose you're a translator, you translate languages, but Google Translate has become very, very effective. So what happens is your normal translation that you would do actually may not be needed from you anymore. But what happens is, if translation requires negotiation, if translation requires sales, then those jobs will continue to exist, because the nuances of how we speak, how we communicate, computers are going to find it extremely difficult to replicate. So if it's a $1 million negotiation, if it's a huge multi-billion dollar sale, then you're not going to risk the translation to a computer. You're going to trust a human being who also knows the industry, knows the vertical, and can also use some human elements in the negotiation or the sales process. So I think it's very important to realize that this is what I do currently. How soon will computers replace what I do? And what additional things I need to learn so that when that happens, some of my colleagues may lose their jobs, but I will still remain relevant. And that's the most critical thing that we have to learn. Let me tell you a personal story about exponential technologies. So as I mentioned, I had gone to Singularity University about 5-6 years ago. And one of the persons who came and spoke to us had a $100 million fund for blockchain. And he convinced us that we all should invest in Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin price those days was $300. Now the fact of the matter is he sort of recommended all of us should put in about $10,000 in Bitcoin. I wrote a book on happiness, so I have very few regrets, but this is one of them. So we asked him that what was the price of this Bitcoin, a year ago, 2 years ago. He said it was $1. So all of us felt that $1 has become $300. It doesn't make sense to now invest at $300. Exponential technology works in the same manner. Now 300 became 600, became 1200. Today is $60,000, $70,000 for a Bitcoin. So if I had invested $10,000 in Bitcoin at that point in time and I had followed that person's advice, today it would have been worth $3-4 million. So just imagine, right? This is how exponential technology works. So you don't have to worry about it's grown 10x, 100x in the last 10 years. Is the right time to get into the industry? Because that 100 is going to become 200, become 500 very, very quickly. So one of the personal regrets I had was that I didn't invest in Bitcoin, because when that 300 became 3,000, I said, okay, now though it's very late, I should not invest. Then that 300 became 30,000. I said, now though it's 100% very, very late to invest in it. But one personal example, how I've been personally impacted by exponential technologies and not so well.